This is Belief Radio, positive thinking radio for positive thinking people with Rich Smith and Phil Keeler. To find out more about us and listen to the show, go to beliefradio.com or download us directly from iTunes. You can listen to the show, listen to the latest show on Belief Global YouTube channel as well, and sometimes even see us on that scary business. Follow us on Twitter at Belief Global. And Facebook, you can get in contact with us on Facebook, email as always, and if you want to look at the products and services we offer you, go to beliefglobal.com. Email address info@beliefglobal.com. All right, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Keeler. Today's discussion is going to be around placebo and the placebo effect.
Okay.
You know what they are? You know what it is?
Yeah, well, I mean, they used to give certain placebos to soldiers in World War II, I believe, didn't they?
Yeah, there's all sorts of experiments been done with placebos, and there's an awful lot more research currently being done, and into this notion that if of giving people a pill which doesn't contain anything in it. You know, it might just have. It looks exactly like a drug would look. Shiny capsule, but it's got nothing in it other than maybe a sugar pill or corn flour in it, and it causes the same effect as if you'd taken the normal drug with the actual drug content in it.
And you know, from what people suggest, what scientists suggest, it works incredibly well, which is amazing because that must mean that the brain is doing all the work here.
Well, that's it. The research shows that how placebos cause people to heal and also to become more successful and improve their performance through the expectation in their mind that the pill will work. And I was watching a program recently on I think it was BBC Two, and they were doing time trials on cyclists, and they asked them to do a time trial in the morning and go as fast as they possibly could, and they recorded the times. And then later in the afternoon, they did a second time trial, and all the cyclists, these are the world champion and ex-world champion cyclists, were all saying that they would never normally do two flat-out time trials in one day, because the second time trial they would always be slower because they'd be more fatigued from the first one.
Right.
And afterwards, well over 50-60% of the cyclists massively improved their performance having taken this pill. They didn't know they were taking a sugar pill. They were told that they would be taking a legal performance enhancing drug. It was a trial that they were doing.
Right.
But virtually 50-60%, and in some cases certain people achieved personal best times that they'd ever done on a bike, having taken nothing more than a cornflour pill.
Wow.
There was another piece of research done in America by Dr. David Calms at the Mayo Clinic, and his specialism was treating people with broken backs. And there's a particular surgical procedure they use where they've pioneered pumping cement, the equivalent of a sort of surgical cement, into the back to repair broken vertebrae. And they've carried these experiments out on over 1 million people, and they get the same results. But what they were doing is he wondered whether he would still get the improvement and help them to mend their broken backs if they didn't give them the treatment. And so they set up this experiment, and certain people had the treatment, and other people didn't actually have the needle put in their back and the cement pumped into their vertebrae, but they thought they were having it done to them. So they would place their fingers on their back and apply pressure and say, right, the needle's going in now, and right, it's all over, it's all done, and end of treatment. And they found remarkably that patients who had broken their backs started walking after this treatment, even though it was a fake treatment.
That's amazing.
And it was just amazing. They did another one in Chevinya in the mountains in this ski resort, and they found that they gave two groups of people oxygen, oxygen to breathe at this high altitude level, and then they had to do a performance walk to see who would be better over a period of time in this performance walk. But half the group were given, sorry, some of the group weren't given any oxygen,
Yeah.
and the rest of the group was given an oxygen tank to breathe, but it didn't have any oxygen in it. So they were taking in fake oxygen. Just the thought in their mind that they had an advantage by breathing this pure oxygen
Yeah.
made them walk faster and outperform the other group by literally half a mile.
That's amazing.
And the others just couldn't keep up.
So it
And
really is mind over matter.
so it's all about this, how you influence the mind. And a lot of the research now is, yes, people know these placebos work, but they're trying to better understand how they work. They know it's a mind body type of thing, but they were trying to sort of scientifically work out why it actually does what it does and how it does what it does. And what they've uncovered so far is that placebos, when you use them, release so much dopamine into your brain, like a normal. It has the same effect as what a normal drug would do. So it stimulates that area of the brain to cause a very positive feeling within you. And it's
Mm.
that positive feeling that causes the healing or the improvement in success, which I think is really interesting.
Mm.
Uh, they also did experiments on doctors showing how two groups of doctors, some doctors were using very nice words and behavior when they did their treatments, and other doctors weren't using the nice words and behavior. They weren't being awful. They just weren't. They weren't being. They weren't doing anything other than giving the treatments, and they found that there was a
Yeah.
massive increase in people's well-being and health just by being nice to people.
Well, I think if you've got an empathic kind of doctor, then that also builds trust, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
but it's true in our daily lives, isn't it? If we bump into somebody and we start talking to them at the bus stop and they're really nice and they strike up a conversation and they just come over in a very sort of giving, friendly way, you go away remembering them, don't you? You think
hmm.
you feel really good about them,
Yeah.
and it puts you in a positive state of mind. So the reason we're talking about this and just sharing with you these notions that, an artificial pill can, in many cases, lead to improvements. Okay, different people are more susceptible, but it's the notion that that taking this pill, an artificial pill, can lead to you having the same improvements or healing as if you'd taken a real pill.
Yeah.
So, what my question is
Yeah.
to the listeners today is: do you wish you could take a pill in your life, and after you'd taken it, everything in your life would be successful and you could get exactly what you want from your life? And because I'm sure we all,
We all
from time
would.
to time, would like to just say, yes, let's just take a pill and then everything will go exactly how we want it to.
I mean, it's nice that science are looking into the placebo effect more from this documentary. That they had lots of information there. You do sport, and so do I. We're both gym bunnies, right? And I don't know whether you drink these special kind of protein drinks and other
I don't, because
and
they're
other
all.
and other stuff. But I'm thinking, and I'm not just talking about protein drinks. I'm also talking about simulation drinks to move faster, like the caffeine stuff. They're in a way, I think, probably quite a placebo effect as well, aren't they?
Well, they are, and the marketing backs it up. The marketing convinces us, pushes onto us that you take this and this will lead to an improvement. And when you watch the adverts, you've normally got a very high profile athlete, with some very sort of intense music, and they perform at a real high performance level, and then afterwards you see them drinking the Lucasade or whatever it is drink afterwards to show, oh, this is what's the inference is, that's what's causing the step up change.
Mm.
When And I remember when I was doing my Great Britain dragon boating years ago, and coming across a guy who was in one of the GB teams, and he was in one of the senior teams, and he'd also been a world champion in other sports. And I was talking to him about protein drinks and things. He said, I never take them, he said, I just use what's natural. I bring some grapes with me. They've got the sugar in. They're natural. They give me exactly what I want. And I learned a lot from that guy. And it's true,
Yeah.
it's true. But I think anything that you give yourself, and when you give yourself it in your mind, there is an expectation that it will make you better in some way. That has an effect.
Yeah.
And so my question for us today on the show is, how can we use placebos to improve our own personal success and happiness in our lives without actually having to take the pill?
Okay. Right.
And my starting point is essentially program our brain. Learn to program our brain so that it achieves the same placebo effects as if we take a pill.
Okay.
What do you think to that?
Yeah, yeah, it sounds good. And how do we do that? I suppose it's all about, as we say on many times on this show, it's all about thinking positively and getting sort of the negative behaviors out.
Well, yes, it is. But again, it's very difficult for some people to suddenly just start thinking positively, because in order to think positively, you have to go a bit deeper and challenge some of your values and beliefs, because you may be carrying some values and beliefs from the past that have been ingrained into you to believe certain things. And if you do have them, just thinking positively probably will have no effect on you whatsoever, because your fundamental DNA, I don't mean your biological DNA, but I'm talking about your value and beliefs DNA, if you like, are suggesting otherwise. So no matter what you say to yourself positively, you'll still reject it at a subconscious level. So it is about looking at those values and beliefs and starting to consciously question, what values and beliefs do I carry uh, within me, and how do they help me, and how do they hinder me? And you've got to get to the point of writing them down. What really matters to me in my life? What are my values? What do I stand for? And get that fleshed out so that you can then play around with it and go, well, yeah, well, actually, some of those things that I've written down, I can see how they're hindering me in my life and holding me back. Then you have a choice. Then you have to decide whether you're going to do anything about them and change them. And the way I find that you can move to a more positive way of thinking and learn to program your brains is all through the power of questions. As you have to start challenging yourself with different questions to what you normally ask. For example, ever asked that question of yourself? You wake up or some part of the day and you just say, why does my day always go so wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we've all done it.
Yeah.
But you think about it, you're asking yourself a question, why does my day always go wrong?
I
And
don't yeah.
your subconscious will pick up on that and focus on making sure that continues.
There's something that I do, and this works very well. If because we do lots of stuff here. I always have an end goal. So when I wake up, I'll be looking at the end goal and saying this is going to go the perfect way,
Yes.
rather than the latter that we've just spoken about.
Yeah, is imagine the positive outcome that you want to have, regardless of whether it is there at the moment. Is try and put the actual final goal that you're looking for, or the final experience that you want to have.
Yeah.
Because as we've said before on the shows, you get what you focus on. If you focus on being negative or focus on everything's going to go wrong, it will.
Yes.
But when you think about that question, why does my day always go so wrong? And people usually say that when they have one event that happens, and that's enough to throw them into a state of negative thinking for the rest of the day. And then your subconscious just delivers what you've asked it for. You've posed it a question. Why does my day always go so wrong? And so it thinks, right, well, I'll make sure it keeps going wrong for you. And all through the day, things happen that just build on that first premise that you've given it. So a better question to ask is, how can I make the most of this next hour? Rather than, why does my day always go so wrong? And yes, when something's going wrong, you might feel really cheesed off, but this is the point we're talking about learning to program your brains, because the successful, happy people, that we all have the same experiences, we all have, or similar experiences. Obviously, they're different for different people. But the difference between those that end up becoming a slave to whatever happens to them during the day and those that aren't a slave, they're a master of what they do during the day, is simply how they choose to respond when things happen. And they fire themselves with questions, the right questions, all through the day. And that shifts their way of thinking. It programs their brain to think in a different way. So another question could be, what am I grateful for today? What am I grateful for today? And so many people focus on what they haven't got, or I'll only be happy when. I will only be happy when I have a bigger house. I'll only be happy when I have a bigger salary. I'll only be happier when I've bought that yacht and it's moored in Brighton Marina. If you do that, you're always going to be virtually permanently miserable until you have what you say you need to be happy. And of course, you get the yacht, you get the bigger house, you're still not happy. Because it's like only when, it's conditional. Whereas I came across a guy years ago, and his way of looking at life was, every day above ground is a good one. And I like that. He said it in a slightly sort of chirpy fashion, tongue in cheek, maybe a little bit, but he had a point, because as long as he was alive, he was happy, because he can make whatever he wants out of each day if he's alive. But if he's dead, he can't do anything about it. It really doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So by setting yourself with the right outlook each day, you can start to program your mind to give it more of what you're looking for. But because our minds are really like computers in a lot of respects, in terms of there is a saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you have a computer and you put some faulty software into it, there's no way will it operate. If it's got a virus in it, it's always going to operate with that faulty virus in, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And how do you get rid of a faulty virus?
Another program to get rid of it. Antivirus software.
And what does it do? It deletes it, doesn't it? It deletes the virus, and then you have to reinstall the right program so it does work. That's what I'm suggesting we need to do to get the outcomes we're looking for in life. Is think of your brain like a computer. It's so susceptible every day. It gets so many things thrown at it. And if you're not careful, you take them all on board, including all the advertising that we get bombarded with, telling us that unless we have certain things, then we'll never be happy, and we need all these things. You don't. So imagine thinking to yourself, right, my brain, I've got to protect it, and I've got to give it only positive suggestions or uplifting thoughts, because by doing so, that will edge me closer to the final outcomes that I'm looking for in my life. So I'm now going to start examining what are the faulty programs I'm currently running, which actually jeopardize and hinder my happiness and success. And if you write them down and start to write them down and say, well, what are my prevailing thoughts? Because we don't really think about them, do we? Consciously each day we just get on with our life, but not that many people consciously step back and say, what are my prevailing thoughts each day? What are the typical thought patterns that I carry each day? Because I guarantee whatever those thought patterns are, they are holding you in a certain place in your life. And if you want to change any part of your life, you have to change some of those thought patterns that you carry.
Yeah.
But if you never really identify what they are, you haven't got a hope in hell of changing them, have you?
No, not at all. No.
So do you see where I'm coming from with this?
Yeah. I do.
So ask the right questions to start challenging yourself. What are my habitual ways of thinking each day in my life? And start to write down the answers. Once you've got those down, start to ask another question. How do those thoughts help or hinder my progress to where I'd like to be in my life? And these questions are really powerful. And if you ask the right questions each day, you can literally reprogram your brain to the point where all you're carrying is exactly what you want to be carrying.
Rich, tell the listener why it's important as well to write things down, because that is a very important process, isn't it?
Well, it's detaching yourself from it's extracting whatever's in your brain onto paper so that you can then decide whether it needs to go back in or not. If you don't think to ink, your brain just sometimes everything races round and round your brain and gets all confused and interspersed and everything, and you can never really see the wood for the trees. You have to take it out of your brain, put it onto paper so you can almost detach and look at it objectively. And also it's a permanent record, so you don't need to store everything in the brain, because your memories, we do forget things. They'll always be in there, but sometimes we forget. And you need to have something to go back to, like a benchmark each time, to remind yourself, because each day, even the most simple days of even people with the most simple forms of life, they can be quite complex. There's a lot of stimulus going
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
and you can easily lose track of where you are or what you were trying to achieve. So having something that you can go back to on paper or in your iPhone or wherever you like to keep it, that record enables you to step back again and focus in on what were you trying to achieve,
yeah.
and remind yourself what you were trying to achieve, so that the stirrings during the day don't distract you away from what you're trying to get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when you do write things down, there is a certain level of, I suppose, commitment as well, because you've got it
Yes,
stored. And now it's like, I'm not going to say it's like a marriage, but if you know it's in the same place, you can look at it every day and commit to it more, and
absolutely.
that will manifest the right outcome for you.
And interestingly, a lot of research was it's probably still being done, but I remember reading some research about 5 years ago about what was the difference between the way a millionaire thinks and the way a billionaire thinks. And there's a lot of studies done on this,
Hmm.
and essentially they couldn't find a difference other than one thing.
Right.
And a millionaire, they found, on average, tended to review their goals that they'd written down on paper at least once a day,
Right.
so that they stay focused, so they never veered away. Every single day they reminded themselves of what they were trying to achieve, so that they didn't get distracted by lesser things. Um, the billionaires, they found, did the same, but they reviewed their goals at least 3 or 4 times a day.
Okay.
So
That's interesting.
if you don't believe us, or you think it's a waste of time about writing your words down onto paper, think again. Because if you've got aspirations of being a millionaire or a billionaire, then start writing them down.
We normally end on 3 top tips, but I don't feel that we need to do it for this one. Any further advice to help people with this?
Um, we could go into it in a lot of different ways, but I would just say to yourself, think of your brain like a sponge, and your subconscious mind, the role of your subconscious is to protect and look after you and give you what you want, but it's essentially a slave to the conscious mind. So whatever you consciously think about during the day, you are programming your subconscious mind. And a bit like the genie in the lamp with Aladdin, it has no choice but to do whatever the conscious mind asks it to do. So and also the subconscious can't discern between something which is real, a real event happening, or an imagined event. So whatever you're programming your subconscious mind with through your conscious daily thinking, your subconscious is going to respond and act as if it was real, even if it isn't, which I guess is what we're saying about placebo. It's just the thought that that placebo is doing something for us makes us respond differently and changes our biochemistry and causes quite stunning things to happen to us. So if you're armed with that knowledge and realize and can make that connection, if you choose, or when you choose on a daily basis, to program into your mind the very real positive things that you want to come into your life and get clear about what they are and program yourself with them with your daily thought processes, you're through consciously sending those messages to yourself and thinking about them, you will automatically send auto suggestion to the subconscious mind, and that will start to help you to get what you want in your life, just like a placebo does. And therefore, essentially everything, it comes down to you. It's within your control on whether you want to use this wisdom that we've just shared with you to help you advance your life, or whether you want to continue operating with your own habitual thinking patterns, which might not work for you. Whichever way is fine, because at the end of the day, it's your life. But I think life is for living. It's for living a very memorable life. So you may as well get the most out of your life by consciously taking control of your thoughts, conquering your fear, thinking positively, practicing. Notice the difference when you do practice. That's the thing that is important as well, is pay attention to the details of your behavior and your thoughts and notice what works and what doesn't work, and then make little changes. But at the end of the day, just get comfortable with this thought that you can be, do, and have whatever you want in your life, by using the power of that amazing device in your skull called our brains. Have a good one.